So today we're going to be making my famous chili, but we're going to be making it vegetarian style. So you see all this meat in there, you see the beans, you see a little bit of tomato in there, and it just looks so good. This has been simmering on the stove on a low setting for about 2 hours. I'm going to show you how to make it. I'm going to show you how I make it without any meat. This is a meat-free option, and it tastes so good you won't even miss your ground beef. So let's jump right into it. I do have a recipe on how I make chili a more traditional style with ground turkey on my channel. I will have that link down below, but pretty much so we're going to start with this here, which is the star of the show. These are pretty much a staple in my kitchen these days. I've made enchiladas, I've made tacos, I've made spaghetti, I've made pretty much everything you could think of that needs like a ground meat base with these, and they are really good, and it's hard to really taste the difference. And this is by the Light Life brand. No, they're not paying or sponsoring me to talk about them, but usually I'll get the original and the Mexican. Even if I'm not making a Mexican dish, the Mexican kind of has a nice flavor to it, so usually I'll mix the two. I'm going to be using 3 packs of this, and this is non-GMO friendly option. And then you want to use your choice of beans. Traditionally, you use pinto and kidney beans, but I've found these chili beans in my grocery store, and they're actually hot chili beans. I love beans in my chili, so usually you only need one can of each, but I like to throw in an extra can of chili beans. If you don't like a lot of beans in yours, then you want to half the recipe opposed to doubling it. You also want to have tons of tomato. Chili is a tomato based dish, so traditionally we use about 2 cans of diced tomatoes and then like 1 tomato sauce. I'll add a little bit of crushed tomatoes, and then to thicken it I'll sometimes add a little bit of tomato paste. So you'll see exactly how I use these products. And then your broth. I've always used a good chicken broth for a good meaty flavor to my chili, but because I don't eat meat anymore, we've converted to the vegetable broth. If you don't have a vegetable broth, it's good to have these in your cabinet, even if you do, because sometimes if I need a broth really quickly and I don't have any of those on hand, like I always have these in the back of my cabinet, and it's easy to just go ahead and make my own broth. But pretty much you mix this with some water, and it's a powder, and it pretty much will turn into that. So either or will work great. Vegetables, usually I like a lot of vegetables, and I like a lot of beans in mine, so I usually do like a whole onion, 2 bell peppers. This is a large jalapeno, so I probably will only use half so it's not too spicy, but if you want to kick up the spice, a whole one, especially if you're sick, will help to kind of knock out that cold. Then I also love to use garlic. This is equivalent to about 3 heads of garlic, and I kind of make it easy on myself, and I buy the pre-peeled garlic, and it's organic, so I probably will use 2 or 3 of these. You guys will see how much of the ingredients I use. I really don't measure, but I'll try to measure for you guys. I kind of just eyeball and add as needed. And then once the chili is on the stove and ready, I like to pair it with a nice jasmine rice, and then also cornbread is usually the traditional way to pair your chili, but today we're going to be using the El Torito style sweet corn cakes. If you've ever been to El Torito's or any Mexican restaurant and had these sweet corn cakes, they are to die for. So we love to use the ice cream scooper and scoop a few scoops of this into our chili as well for a sweet touch. So I'm going to show you how I make that as well. I'm going to go ahead and cut up my vegetables and mince my garlic off camera, and then I'll be back to get started with the meat and all of this goodness here. So I'm about to put the meat on the stove and get it all browned, but before I do, I went ahead off camera and I cut up my vegetables. I cut them up. I don't really go too precise or too small. I actually like to taste and see and feel the vegetables in my chili, so they're not as chopped, but if you want them more finely chopped, you can go ahead, but this is just the white onion, bell pepper, and then that's a jalapeno. I did about 2/3 of that onion, so the rest I just put in the bag, and I'll be able to use it throughout the week for other meals. And then I only did half of the jalapeno because my son is eating it, so again I'll be able to use that for other recipes. If this is too much vegetables, there's no requirement or no specific amount of vegetables you need to use for your chili, so adjust accordingly. So yeah, and then this is the garlic here, and I just use my little contraption here to mince it up. And just that quick, it's finished. So let me get this off. And you just remove this into the sink. And then as you can see, that minced it up really nicely and it smells super good. So let's go ahead and get the meat on the stove. Okay, so we got 3 packs of this Light Life ground meat in it. And then this is what it looks like. I did add a little bit of olive oil in it because with natural real meat, as it cooks up and heats up, it kind of has a natural oil to it. Whereas this doesn't have that, so I find that sometimes it will burn in the bottom, especially because it comes as a block. It doesn't necessarily move exactly like real meat. But I'm going to go ahead and just break it down, and as you can see, this is what it looks like when it's broken down. This one that's colored is the Mexican flavor, and this is the original flavor. It's breaking up pretty nicely. If I wasn't holding a big 70D camera, it would be a little bit easier. So as you can see, it's a little bit drier, so I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to it and go ahead and finish cooking this up, and then I'll be back and show you what it looks like. And this is what it looks like. It only takes about 5 minutes to cook. I added just a very light amount of garlic salt because I like everything to be seasoned in my chili. And this is the result. So now I'm going to turn off the fire and I'm going to transfer it into my pot. And this is the pot that I'm going to be using to make my chili. And then I'll be right back. So I went ahead and put the meat into the chili pot. I've turned the fire back on my pan, and I'm going to just add a little bit more of olive oil so that I can cook the vegetables. It's okay to have that leftover residue from the meat in there because that's just going to help season the vegetables. So we're going to go ahead and add the vegetables in there. So I'm going to let this go ahead and cook for about 5 to maybe 10 minutes. I want this to get really soft, and I want everything, the onions specifically, to be more translucent. So while the vegetables cook really quickly, I just went ahead and made my chili mix. If you've ever went to the grocery store and bought the packs of chili, like you know you buy the chili pack or the spaghetti pack or the taco pack, and it's just a pack of seasoning, I kind of make my own, and this is pretty much chili powder, oregano, a little bit of brown sugar, cumin, sea salt, black pepper, and a little cayenne pepper. Also, we added a teaspoon of leaf oregano. I do have the specific measurements in the description box for you guys, and this is basically going to serve as my chili seasoning. You can feel free to adjust my measurements to your liking. So I'm going to stir this again. And I'm going to let these vegetables cook for about 5 to 10 minutes until they're a little bit more soft and those white onions are a little bit more translucent. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my garlic. I find that when you add the garlic right away, it kind of burns a little bit, and I don't want mine to burn. So I add that last. And then after this kind of cooks for a few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the fire and add the seasoning. So I'll be back and I'll show you exactly how I do that. Okay, so while the vegetables cook, I kind of like to work fast and simultaneously to get this done because my kids are running around and they need mommy. So I've already opened up all of my beans. I'm going to take my dark kidney beans and I'm just going to put them into the strainer. And then this is 1 can of hot chili beans. I'm going to add this to the strainer. And then this is a can of pinto beans. I'm going to add this to the strainer. I'm draining out the juice. If you add the juice to your pot instead of straining it, it'll just make you have to use less of your vegetable broth. I don't like to use the bean juice because I feel like it makes the chili taste more beanish, and I want it to have more of a tomato meat taste, if that makes any sense. The recipe only calls for 2 cans of beans, so usually I'll do dark kidney and the pinto beans, and then I've added the hot chili beans just for preference. Pick the 2 of your favorite, and that's what the recipe calls for. I do an extra can because I like beans, but if you don't like beans, use 1 can. If you want the normal recipe, use 2 cans, and if you're a bean lover like me, add 3 cans. Now I'm going to go ahead and let this drain, and I'm going to add this to the pot with the meat. So we're going to give this another stir. My daughter is calling me, so we've got to speed it up here. So basically we're going to just start building our pot of chili. We have the ground meat down there. We have the beans up top. Now let's go ahead and add the tomatoes. But for starters, I'm going to go ahead and add 2 cans of diced tomatoes, 1 can of tomato sauce. I'm going to add a little bit of these crushed tomatoes. I'm not going to do that whole pot, but they look really, really good. So I'm going to add a little bit of that. And then for a thickening agent, I'm going to add a little bit of tomato paste because I like my chili to be a good, nice, not too thick, not too thin, not too brothy, but that's just going to help me get the perfect consistency that I like. So let's go ahead and transfer this stuff into the pot. Okay, mind you, the fire is off. We're not going to turn it on until we have the broth in there. But this is a can of diced tomatoes. Here's our second can of diced tomatoes. This is our tomato sauce. And then this is a little bit of our crushed tomatoes. They look and smell really good, so I just added a little bit of it. I could have gotten a small can, but I added about that much. It was filled to the top. And we're going to give that a good stir and see what it's looking like. So we've added our garlic. We're going to give that a good stir. So we're going to remove it from the fire. We're going to take, it smells so good. So we've turned that off and removed it from the fire. I do like my vegetables to get like really like twice cooked because I like them soft and smooth. I'm going to take my seasonings and just dump that whole thing in there. I'm going to give it a good stir. The vegetables are super soft, I'm sure you can tell. And now we're ready to add this to the pot. Ooh, it smells so good, y'all. It smells delicious. The last time you saw this pot, I gave it a good stir. You can kind of see the consistency of what everything looks like. You can see your beans in there, your dark ones, your light ones, your tomatoes and all that. And you can kind of see what you're working with. I have not added the tomato paste. I'm going to see if I need it before I add it. But again, you have a huge can of crushed tomatoes. So if you want more tomatoes than what you see here, go ahead and add it. But this is good enough for me. Now, I went ahead and let that seasoning that I made, that chili seasoning that I made, marinate with those vegetables. And I'm going to add this to the pot and mix it up, and we'll be right back. Okay, and then this is what it looks like in there. I'm going to go ahead and mix it up. It doesn't look pretty, but I promise you it smells so good. Okay, this is what it's looking like. Again, this may not be appetizing for some people, but if you've made chili, you know this looks really good. But of course it's too thick, so we're going to turn it into a good chili with some good broth. Again, if this was a meat eater's chili, we would be using chicken broth, but because we are pescatarian and we don't eat land animals, we're going to go with vegetable broth. So I'm going to go ahead and pour that in. It smells so good, you guys. The seasoning that we make is going to be what seasons this, so you don't need to add more seasoning. But once you let this cook for about an hour or so, you'll be able to see for yourself if you need more seasoning. So I added 1 pack. Or 1 thing of chicken broth, and as you can see, it loosened up really nicely. But if this is too loose, then we can go ahead and add that paste, and as it cooks, it'll thicken back up a little bit, because again, this is too thin. But we needed that broth to kind of break everything up and kind of marry it back together through cooking. It's going to simmer for an hour, and it's going to thicken back up. Okay, and that there is the tomato paste. I'm just going to mix it up, and again, this is going to help it to thicken up over that hour. If you taste it right now, it's not going to taste as good as it's going to taste like in an hour or so. So don't taste it yet. Just go ahead and turn your fire on, which is what we're going to do now. I'm going to turn it on high. So I turned the fire on high, and then I'm going to turn my timer on for 50 minutes. I'm so sorry about yesterday. So I'm actually going to let it go a whole 1 hour. Also, feel free to add a few bay leaves. It's going to add a nice, healthy, earthy, good flavor to your chili. You can also add more cayenne pepper. If someone or the family is sick, add a little bit of cayenne pepper or add that whole jalapeno. This is going to be good for the soul, good for the heart, help heal the person. And it's also going to have that extra heat to help sweat out that cold. So now that we've given it a final stir, you can see all the beautiful colors in there. You could have added some red bell pepper, some orange bell pepper for even more color. We're going to go ahead and turn it on the fire, and we're going to be back in an hour to check on our chili. So we're a minute shy of 15 minutes in. We got 45 minutes to go, and as you can see, our chili We haven't touched it. It's still on high and it's just coming to a boil. So it took a minute for it to come to a boil. We're going to give it a nice stir and then we're going to reduce the heat. And we're going to put the lid on so that it can simmer for another hour. Kind of make sure you go down there and make sure nothing is sticking. And it looks really good. You can add more tomato. I still have my can of tomatoes here on hand in case I decide I wanted to. But we're pretty much good to go. So I've given it a nice stir. Now let's add the lid and reduce our heat. We're going to let that cook for another 45 minutes. Now since we have 45 minutes left, our corn cakes are going to take about 40 minutes to cook, so we're in perfect shape to have everything ready on time. So I'm going to go ahead and add in the packet or the powder. This is what it looks like, and I get this right. It's right next to the cornbread, the Jiffy cornbread in my local Rouse. If they don't have this, just go ahead and do regular cornbread. I love to make cornbread muffins. This is just what my husband prefers over the cornbread. So the recipe is pretty much self-explanatory. It's going to call for 1 packet of your mix, 1/4 cup of melted butter. I prefer to use vegan butter, and this is the Earth's Balance soy-free vegan butter. And then I'm going to use a 1/4 cup of water. And then 1 can of sweet corn. I'm going to give this a good mix, and then I'm going to add it to my loaf pan. I'm going to make 2, but I find that when I double the recipe, it doesn't come out as good as when I do a single recipe. Sometimes with some different brands of products, it just happens that way. So I'm going to make this one for tonight, and then I'll make a fresh batch tomorrow when we have leftovers. Okay, so I went ahead and mixed that up and added it to my pan. It's going to rise a little bit, but not come perfectly high up. I'm going to put it in the oven on 350 degrees. My oven is already preheated. It's going to go for about 40 minutes. So I'm going to check it at 35 minutes. It says 40 to 45 minutes. So yeah, I'm going to check it at 35 minutes just to make sure that it's not overcooking. And then the last thing will be the rice. I'm going to wait about 20 minutes until I put the rice in because it's only going to take about 15 minutes to cook. So everything can be ready at the exact same time. So it's been a full hour, and I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like. The consistency is so perfect to me. If you want it thicker, again, less broth or more paste. You guys can see, let me lift it up, you can see your beans in there, you can see your tomatoes in there, you can see your bell pepper in there, and of course you can see your meat. You can see the light beans, the dark beans. It's just really, 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 really colorful, and it's the perfect consistency again for my household. Again, like I said before, add more tomatoes. Make your recipe your own. You know, you don't want to do exactly what I did. You kind of want to make it your own. Maybe try it like how I did the first time, and then the next time, you know, touch it up and add things that your family loves. I did off camera add a little bit more seasoning just because I prefer a little bit more seasoning in mine. So I added a little bit of garlic salt, a little bit of Cajun seasoning. I also added a few bay leaves, which I just added about 4, and then I kind of fished through them just a few minutes ago and took them out and threw them away. The bay leaves are going to just add an even better earthy kind of flavor to your chili. And we're pretty much done. And this is the final result. Let's zoom out a little bit. And this is the final result. This is about 2 hours later of just letting it slow cook and simmer on the stove. This is one of those things that you can keep on the stove all day. You can start it around lunchtime, even in the morning, and just cook it on a low setting on a stove, and it's gonna just thicken up, and all of the flavors and juices are gonna marinate and come together so beautifully. And this is what mine looks like plated. I've brought out the fancy lighting. As you guys see, my husband just came home and he brought me home some fresh, beautiful flowers. So I had to get those in the shop before I put them in some water. This is my bowl right here. Of course, I garnished it with a little bit of parsley because it makes everything look pretty, right? So I have my chili at the bottom. How we do it here in California is we do it with a scoop of rice. We also do it with a little bit of cornbread. I opted out for the cornbread and I went for the corn cakes because I just love the way they taste. in this. My husband's from the Midwest and they do it with corn chips. They do it with Fritos, which let me know how you guys do it wherever you're from. We also like to kind of garnish it and have other options here for you. So if you want to bring out that onion, I prefer red onion if I do a fresh onion on top, but you can pull out some of that onion and put a little onion on top for a little bit of a crunch. We also like sour cream in it sometimes, and of course a little cheese never hurt nobody. So let me know how you guys like yours. This is how I like mine, is sometimes I kind of switch it up and add my onion and my sour cream and my cheese and kind of make it really, really, really good. This is a dish that you can have for 2 or 3 days. So tonight I can have it like this, and then I can switch it up tomorrow and have it with these options here. Be sure to comment below and let me know how you pair your chili. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with your friends. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.